They demolished the bridge while Uncle Jim was still on it. I am not joking. I pulled up just in time to see my 75-year-old uncle, clad in striped pajama pants and a Harvard Law sweatshirt, calmly sipping his morning chamomile tea as a demolition crew fired up a bulldozer 10 feet away. The foreman looked baffled. "Sir, you need to leave the structure," he said. Jim didn't flinch. "Son, this bridge has weathered 2 wars and 3 floods. I laid some of its stones myself, hauled from a civil war quarry. I'm not MOVYing because some petty suburban dictator with a clipboard and an ego trip pitched a fit. That's when the bulldozer reversed and plowed through a side beam. I nearly jumped out of my car. Jim," I shouted, sprinting toward the creek. But Uncle Jim just finished his tea, stepped off the bridge like he was exiting a stage, and watched it crumble behind him in a slow cascade of wooden history. He turned to me, grinned, and said, "They just picked a fight with the wrong federal judge. It all started over something absurd, as these things often do. A few months back, a new HOA board had seized control of the quiet little neighborhood near Jim's land. They dubbed themselves the Community Unity Council, which I found hilarious given their first move was to hand out fines like party favors. Flower pots became unauthorized fixtures, bird feeders were wildlife hazards, and kids' bikes were eyesores. But they reserved their real vendetta for Jim's bridge, a hand-restored relic at the edge of his property, where his land met a creek that had been a boundary since colonial days. It wasn't even under the HOA's jurisdiction, but that didn't stop Lisa, the newly minted HOA president, from declaring it an affront to the neighborhood's YB. Lisa was the type who'd print business cards for a volunteer gig and once called the cops because a neighbor's dog barked at her too loudly. She tried to get the bridge condemned, citing fake safety violations and a ridiculous claim about a rat infestation. Jim wasn't Hawaiiing it. He fired back with a 3-page letter citing federal heritage laws, local easement rights, and a poetic note about how the bridge was listed in the state's Registry of Historic Engineering Landmarks. Lisa's response? A neon green sticker slapped on the bridge that read, "Scheduled for removal, HOA compliance mandatory." Jim mailed it back with a note, "Return to sender, illegal nonsense." You'd think that'd be the end, but Lisa doubled down. She sent increasingly unhinged letters. One accused Jim of willful defiance of community enhancement objectives, whatever that meant. Another claimed the bridge was at national security risk due to its antiquated design. We laughed about that one for a solid 10 minutes. Then came the forged demolition order, complete with official-looking seals and a signature from a non-existent county official. Jim saw through it instantly. He set it on his desk and muttered, "Lipstick on a pig." He called the county to confirm it was fake. They did, and added there was no record of any HOA demolition request. We figured it was just another empty threat. We didn't realize Lisa had gone rogue. The morning of the demolition, I was DRIVing in for the weekend when I spotted construction trucks from the highway. At first, I thought it was roadwork until I saw their path veering straight for the creek. My heart sank. By the time I arrived, the bridge was rubble, the crew was packing up, and Lisa stood there with a cappuccino in one hand, her phone in the other, live streaming her triumph over the blight. She turned to me and said, "You're welcome. Your uncle can use the road now like a regular person." That's when Jim emerged from his house with a leather binder. He walked up to her, handed her a pre-drafted federal injunction, and said, "You might want to lawyer someone who knows felony vandalism and federal property law." Lisa scoffed, flapping the papers like they were junk mail. "Oh, please, this was a community upgrade." Jim tilted his head, cool as ever. "Ma'am, you just illegally destroyed a federally funded historic structure on private land with forged documents. You didn't just mess with a bridge, you messed with me." He turned to me and grinned like a chess grandmaster setting a trap. "Call your cousin in D.C. Tell her it's time." My cousin, by the way, works at the Department of Justice. Jim had been ready for tea. She knew Lisa would overstep. He just didn't expect her to be this reckless this soon. As I helped him sift through the wreckage, it hit me. The HOA didn't just overreach, he thought they were in Wine Cybele. Lisa and her paper-pushing posse believed their little council gave them carte blanche to trample laws, logic, and rights. They had no idea who they'd crossed. Jim wasn't just a retired judge, he was the guy who once made a tech mogul sob on the stand, then recommended a good counselor. That night, Jim sat by the fire pit with a glass of whiskey. "Some folks build bridges," he said. "Others torch them. Lisa just dynamited hers, and I'll make sure she sinks in the fallout." I believed him when Jim set his mind to something. The universe bent to accommodate. The HOA had no clue what was coming. The next morning, Jim was at the kitchen table, coffee brewing, printer humming, surrounded by files like a one-man law firm. You'd think he was prepping for the Supreme Court, not an HOA grudge match. I offered to cook breakfast, but he waved me off. Justice first, bacon second. He wasn't mad, not in the yelling, stomping way. He was focused, methodical, which was far more terrifying. I'd seen that look on TV during a bribery trial, right before he dismantled a city councilman's career. He'd already pulled satellite maps, land deeds, and state preservation records. "We're not just winning," he said, tapping the table. "I want their charter burned for kindling." His precision was surgical. He found an HOA bylaw providing they had no say over private land by the creek, another barring use of funds for unapproved projects, and a rule against damaging third-party property. Lisa had broken her own code 6 ways to Sunday. By midday, we were at the county assessor's office. The clerk lit up when she saw Jim. "Judge Carter," she half-whispered, like he was a celebrity. Jim nodded politely. "Just here for some fireworks ammo." She blinked, confused, until he slid over the fake demolition order. Her eyes widened. "This isn't our seal, it's from Parks and Rec, and it's misspelled." Jim chuckled. "Classic Lisa can't even forge right." We left with a notarized statement confirming no permit existed, plus 2 memos from the city's Heritage Committee affirming the bridge's protected status. A federal restoration grant had cleared days before Lisa's stunch trashed a national treasure. Back home, a contractor named Dave, one of the demolition crew, was waiting at the gate, twitchy and guilt-ridden in a ball cap and boots. "I didn't know," he blurted. "They said it was a nuisance job, no permit, no questions." Jim offered him lemonade and a seat, like a scene from a courtroom drama. Dave spilled it all. Lisa paid cash, showed fake papers, claimed Jim was unhinged, and threatened to blacklist the crew if they balked. Jim took notes, then asked, "Mind saying that on video?" Dave agreed and handed over the work order, Lisa's signature, and a scribbled note: "Tear it down before the state intervenes." It wasn't just solid, it was dynamite. That night, Jim hosted his old friend Sarah, head of the State Historic Infrastructure Trust, for dinner. Over ribs and cornbread, she reviewed the EVY denke and whistled. "This is career-ending bad, maybe jail time bad." Jim poured her bourbon and nodded. "Then we do it with flair." Meanwhile, Lisa was gloating on the HOA's private Facebook group, posting VY Tory shots of the wrecked bridge with captions like "Blight gone, progress won." Her cronies cheered, but the rest of the neighborhood wasn't buying it. Mrs. Grayson wrote, "My engagement photos were on that bridge, shame on you." Another said, "This isn't what HOAs are for." Lisa brushed it off. "Your overreacting made it safer." Jim saw it and laughed. The worst VY lanes think they're saints. He printed her posts, marking them for EVY denke of intent. Then, in a stroke of genius, he mailed every resident a letter detailing Lisa's illegal acts, the bridge's historic status, and her forged paperwork. It was concise, professional, and brutal. 2 days later, Lisa called an emergency HOA meeting for damage control. It backfired spectacularly. A rattled board member dropped by that night with a thumb drive. "I recorded it," he said, then left. We listened. Lisa claimed Jim twisted the law, the bridge wasn't protected, and the state was wrong. Someone asked why she forged the order and paid cash. Her reply? "Because I knew they'd say no, and I'm not letting some old judge intimidate me." It was her undoing legally and story-wise. She'd made it personal, and Jim was ready to etch her defeat into legal history. Jim filed the lawsuit 3 days later, CIVYL Thunderbolt in district court: property destruction, fraud, abuse of power, trespassing, and violation of federal heritage laws, plus a cheeky emotional distress claim for poetic flair. The neighborhood buzzdogs barked louder when Lisa passed. The Facebook group went silent. She strutted into a town hall in heels and a garish blazer, railing about vindictive harassment by a washed-up traditionalist. No one clapped. Her own board avoided her gaze. She hired a lawyer, Mike Tanner, a personal injury guy with indoor sunglasses and a legal titan billboard. Jim glanced at his website, smirked, and said, "He's perfect, she'll need him when this blows up." Lisa's defense was a mess. The bridge was on communal land. Jim neglected it, and the HOA acted for safety. No citations, just bluster. Jim marked it up like a bad essay. The case hit the news. HOA wrecks historic bridge, judge strikes back, and a reporter dubbed Jim, "Atticus Finch meets John Wayne." Lisa tried using HOA funds for her defense. The board revolted. "I paid dues for potholes, not your bridge tantrum," one snapped. Her grip slipped. Garden clubs snubbed her. The mailman dodged her porch. A state preservation officer, Emily, called Jim, furious. The bridge was slated for a National Heritage Tour. Lisa had bulldozed a landmark. Emily vowed to testify. Then a board member, Tom, turned over emails and recordings. Lisa admitting the forgery, saying, "Let him sway, no judge will back him over me." It was checkmate. In court, Judge Ellen Pierce, a friend of Jim's, presided with sharp impartiality. Lisa's lawyer, Mike, floundered, framing it as a CIVYC misunderstanding. Jim countered, "This is about arrogance destroying a historic treasure." Witnesses sealed it. Dave confirmed the cash and lies. Emily detailed the bridge's status. Lisa crumbled under Jim's cross, admitting no permits or checks. Her recorded voice, "Erase his legacy," echoed damningly. The verdict was swift. The HOA and Lisa were liable for due law $300,000, plus bridge reconstruction. Lisa was barred from leadership roles. She fled the courthouse, chased by cameras and a stray dog. Jim stood on the steps, thanking the court and community. No gloating, just, "Laws matter. Arrogance doesn't rewrite them." That night, candles glowed in windows, notes piled at his mailbox. The bridge rose again in weeks, rebuilt by neighbors who once ignored it. Kids helped. Mrs. Grayson planted flowers. At the reopening, a senator made it a federal landmark, honoring Jim as a guardian of justice. He waved it off. "We did this together." A plaque read, "Rebuilt in trust, not just timber." Lisa's house sold cheap. Her name became a cautionary tale. "Jim handed me co-ownership of the land," one son said, saying, "Your fight's next. I promised, no clipboard tyrants here." He laughed, and the bridge stood solid, unshakable, like him.